Society has not been giving us the recipe for success when it comes to our marriages. It's not a recipe for success, it's a recipe for a mess. That's what they've been doing. They've been saying, do whatever makes you happy. And all of a sudden, we get over half of them divorcing because they've been doing what makes them happy. When society says there is no cost to extramarital affairs, all of a sudden, we have a mess on our hands. So even though I don't necessarily want to preach on this message this morning, it's not about what I want. It's about what God wants. And the one thing I know that God does not want is He does not want to see families destroyed. Even if we are a part or a product of those families destroyed, He still has hope for us and He has a better way for us. Our past should not be something that we wallow in and that we just stay in. Instead, we acknowledge that the past is in the past, but I'm moving forward and I'm focusing on God and I'm following Him. And that's what we're going to do this morning as we turn our Bibles to Exodus chapter 20, verse 14. This, a super long one. Exodus chapter 20, verse 14. Moses coming down and reciting to us what God has said. And it is, you shall not commit adultery. Don't do it. Do not do this. But yet I've told you that these 10 commandments are more than just a list of do's and don'ts. If all we do is look at it on the surface, that's all we're going to get out of it. When I look at thou shalt not commit adultery, I'm like, I don't want to just skim the surface, because if I just skim the surface of it, I'm not going to get what I was hoping to get out of this. I need to go deeper. You want to know how we go deeper with a lot of this stuff? We dive in a little bit deeper in the Word. We start to see what somebody else has possibly said about this. And maybe the greatest person that we could go to is Jesus Himself. Look at what Jesus says concerning adultery in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 8. Jesus speaking to them, He says, you've heard that it was said of those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I, this is Jesus speaking, say to you that whoever looks at a woman and lusts for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Jesus is taking it a step further. Because one, Jesus isn't going to just the action, He's going to the heart. He's identifying the heart. He's not saying that anybody that looked at a woman and lust after her has committed adultery with her in his members. No, He's saying it's in your heart. It's not just about the action, it's also about the attitude. And Jesus is trying to get us to see that. He's also pointing something out that many of us don't even recognize in this. He's pointing out that it's our eyes. Where are we looking? What are we looking at? And how are we looking? You go to the very next chapter in Matthew chapter 6. Look at what He says here in verse 22 down through 24. He says, the lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be filled with light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. For he will either hate the one and love the other, or he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. This is more than just do's and don'ts. This is a principle for us to live by. When He's saying, thou shalt not commit adultery, the principle that He's trying to get us to live by and He's trying to get us to understand is the principle of loyalty. He's saying this, you will either love one or else you'll be loyal to the other. Where is your loyalty going to lie? And He's going a step farther than we even thought He was going. Because when He's questioning our loyalty, He's not only questioning our loyalty when it comes to our earthly relationships, He's questioning our loyalty when it comes to our spiritual relationships. Where are things actually at? This is a principle of loyalty. And loyalty is not a word that I think we use that often. Here's the definition of loyalty. Loyalty out of Merriam-Webster implies a faithfulness that is steadfast in the face of any temptation to renounce, desert, or betray. Dictionary.com said it is the state or quality of being loyal. It is faithfulness to commitments or obligations. Here's how I would try to summarize this and define it for you. Loyalty is the faithful practice that protects your loves. Loyalty is a faithful practice that protects your loves. Loyalty, it's more than just what Dictionary.com is saying. It's more than just a state or a quality of being. Unless we are thinking of the state or quality of being in the eyes of God and who He is. Because who God is not just who He is, it's what He does. Loyalty should not just be the state of your being. Loyalty should be what we are actually doing and what we are actually practicing. Because in a world that is out there that has been trying to tell us that it doesn't matter, there's no cost to adultery, there's no cost to extramarital affairs, in a world that is out there, in a society that is out there, that is giving us a recipe for a mess rather than a recipe for a success, what is happening is that loyalty is the missing ingredient for a love that actually lasts. Loyalty in your marriage is the missing ingredient. Loyalty in your friendships is the missing ingredient. Loyalty in your relationship with God is the missing ingredient. Why do people get divorced? Because there's no loyalty, there's no fidelity, there's no faithfulness, there's no practice of that. Why is it that best friends wind up splitting up and never talking to each other? There's no loyalty. There's no fidelity. There's no faithfulness. Why is it that people leave the church at an alarming rate? There is no loyalty. There is no fidelity. There is no faithfulness. We were just singing here. We were just worshiping, talking about how great is your faithfulness, God. You've never failed me. You've never turned your back on me. You're always there for me. I may have turned my back on you, but you never turned your back on me. God has given us an example of what loyalty looks like. And yet we won't do it. We don't practice it. And I can say that with confidence. Why? Because 50% of us have wound up being divorced. I can say that with confidence because it's the same amount of rate that people have left the church at one point or another. We're not practicing faithfulness. We don't have loyalty. God has been constantly trying to get us to understand things. God wants us to understand right from wrong and not right from wrong by the world's standards. The world doesn't know what right and wrong is. God gave us 10 commandments to live by, a big 10 for us that have got principles attached to them. Loyalty is always the right thing to do. It is always the right thing to be steadfast and faithful for your commitments.